And at that point, I talked with my father-in-law and my wife, who are both civil engineers.
Oh,
And my wife, like me, didn't get a degree in civil engineering. She's a communications major. So she actually blazed this trail before me, uh, studying up and getting her FE, passing the FE and getting her E.I.T certificate without having an engineering degree. So she helped show me that this was a path that was available for people. So I looked into it, researched, and decided that this was going to be the best path for me and for my family was to pursue getting my E.I.T license with the hope of getting a PE someday. What was hard is really like setting that discipline, those boundaries for myself, and it really helped me grow a lot, honestly, as a person to really have that disciplined schedule, really sit down and being intentional with it. Like was like exhaling like really deep breaths because all of this work, months of my life, all this time, all this stress, worry, perseverance, like all culminated into just seeing past in green. And it felt so good. I felt like $1,000,000.
Harrison, so you graduated in 2019 with an accounting degree. Why did you decide to take the FE exam?
I wanted to take the FE exam because it gave me the best opportunity to have upward career mobility in a field that helped balance the lifestyle that I wanted to have, along with having a job that paid well enough for me to be able to support my family.
Okay, so you graduated with an accounting major, but you
Mhm.
didn't really go into the accounting field. Did you start working in the civil engineering field?
So when I graduated in 2019, I was working for the state of California,
Okay.
doing semi accounting work, but the upward mobility that I had available to me didn't pay enough to live in California. So I transitioned into the public accounting field with the goal of getting my CPA license. And so originally, that's what my plan was to become a certified public accountant and do public accounting. But I worked at a CPA firm for about 2 months in the summer of 2021, and I saw the lifestyle that most of the CPAs there had. Uh, a lot of them were single, a lot of them were divorced, and it wasn't what I wanted for me and for my family. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall because I wanted to put my roots down in a work environment that was really healthy, that helped balance career and personal life. And so I saw that and decided that I didn't want to do that. So I transitioned out and went back to working for the state. And at that point, I talked with my father-in-law and my wife, who are both civil engineers.
Oh,
And my wife, like me, didn't get a degree in civil engineering. She's a communications major. So she actually blazed this trail before me, uh, studying up and getting her FE, passing the FE and getting her E.I.T certificate without having an engineering degree. So she helped show me that this was a path that was available for people. So I looked into it, researched, and decided that this was going to be the best path for me and for my family was to pursue getting my E.I.T license with the hope of getting a PE someday.
wow. What a journey. So are you currently working in the civil engineering field?
Currently, no. Currently, I'm working in for this California Department of Transportation, and I work in their budgets department. So I'm an accountant and project manager there, basically. So my goal is since I've passed the FE now, I'm going to be working to try and find a position that's going to be able to give me some engineering experience with the
Okay.
hope of satisfying the requirements to get my E.I.T license, and that's where it's going to go right there.
You already have the frame for it.
Yeah, my wife and I's degrees are down here, and then that's her E.I.T certificate up there. So that's up there to remind us to keep working hard.
That's so awesome. So you passed your FE exam, but they haven't given you the license yet until you have to like do some experience. Is that right?
Right. So for at least for California, I'm not sure how it works for the rest of the states, but for California, there's a couple different options to satisfy the requirements to get your E.I.T certificate. One of them is to have graduated with a 4-year degree in engineering, which I haven't done. I have an accounting degree. So my route is either to go back to school and get more engineering experience there with education, or to find a job experience where without having an E.I.T certificate, I also be able to work under a PE and get qualifying engineering experience that they'll sign off on. that's where I'm at right now, and that's kind of the crossroads I'm at in looking towards my future. But either way, I know that I have a future going into the engineering field. I just have to figure out how I want to get there.
That's awesome. Okay. So given that engineering is vastly different from accounting, you
Mhm.
would quite agree with that. How challenging was it for you to study something completely different than what you learned in college?
It was a real big hurdle at first. Clicking into the math section to start off like the very beginning of my studies, I was getting into math concepts and calculus and geometry that I'd never touched since like the very tail end of high school in math classes that I took there. Because when I got to college, I was going in the business route. I didn't need to really take these complex geometry classes or any kind of high level calc. I took business calc, but the hardest we got there was very, very simple derivatives, which are handled maybe in the first like 5 questions in the derivatives section on Genie Prep. And so that was a real big challenge at first to adjust and learn these new concepts. And so starting off was really tough and really discouraging. Um, but as I just practiced and practiced more again, redid problems, looked up other problems on YouTube, online, and ran through them, I started to get more and more confidence. And I learned that once I got through math and I was getting into like statics, I was actually really enjoying it, because the problem I ran into with accounting that was really tough for me was how subjective it can be depending on the time, because accounting laws can change. They're very fluid with what Congress has passed, who's the president. So that can make it really difficult. And so it's constantly changing. With engineering, there is some of that, but physics doesn't change, gravity doesn't change, formulas don't change unless you're obviously changing your materials. But it's very set in just how is the world created. And so with that, it gave me a lot more peace and confidence knowing that what I'm doing is never going to have to really change in a sense, because based off of just who's in power in the government. Um, and engineering worked better for my brain, actually. I found that it was a lot more fun and enjoyable. I enjoyed working through practice problems. I enjoyed my studies. Whereas when I was studying for CPA exams and for accounting, it was a little bit more difficult and a little bit more tedious, because it would depend on language, it would depend on laws, it would depend on what kind and color of money is being used. So I really enjoyed, at the end of it, I really enjoyed looking back on it with what I was able to know and what I was able to apply and learn.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, so you found yourself that you were enjoying it more than you actually enjoyed accounting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, my wife and I would be laying in bed before going to sleep, and we would be talking about engineering stuff. And so she would be talking to me a little bit about her work, and so I was starting to understand and learn a little bit more of the real world application of engineering and how it's applied. And I was talking with her about what I was studying, and it was helping her refresh and learn a lot of these like base level concepts that she hasn't used in a while, but are still important for her to remember. And so it was fun having those conversations and being able to relate and have like a new dynamic of conversation and relationship together.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So it really helped you to see like how those theories and concepts are slightly being applied into the real world of
Hmm.
engineering. That always helps to see that. Going back, I'm still really impressed, and the fact that with an accounting major, you were able to pass your FE exam on your first attempt. So we haven't talked about that either, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit and talk about your schedule. But I really want to go back to how were you able to conquer those subjects? How did you study them? What was your approach to that? Like, how did you tackle those subjects that, again, you've never seen before?
Yeah. So approaching them, my first step was to just jump straight into it. I found that the courses that I worked through, I had the morning and then the afternoon accelerator course for civil. I found that they did a really good job preparing me with the very first couple of questions with some base level knowledge to introduce me to concepts I've never seen before. And so I jumped in just right away, kind of trusting that the courses were set up in a way to be able to help me at least get a foot in the door. And I had confidence enough in myself and my resourcefulness and my knowledge that I would be able to figure it out. which sometimes worked great because I was able to pick things up really quick. I had that with statics. Statics was something I felt really comfortable with. Um, but other times it was really hard, just depending on kind of which way my brain worked. Dynamics was the most difficult subject in the world for me. That was one of the ones that I highlighted red on my study sheet and was like, this is the one that I'm okay just completely tossing to the side and not worrying about, and better focus on some of the other heavier topics. So we can get into more about kind of how I divvied that out later, but tackling the subjects, I just went in. I just started. I would if there were concepts that I was struggling with, um, after rewatching the video and concepts and doing practice problems on Genie Prep a couple of times, I would go into YouTube and I would pull up explanation videos from a couple of YouTubers that I found that I thought really did like a good lecture, like a full length lecture on maybe like one specific topic. Like an example of that would be integrals. I was great at derivatives going forward, but integrals taking everything backwards was really hard for my brain. And so I went and watched a couple of integral videos that were like 45 minutes long, like slowly going through multiple problems step by step. So having that coupled with the videos that Genie Prep had helped me piece a lot of information together, and then eventually just running through practice problems over and over and really asking myself, do I understand how we got here? Like, not just can I get the right answer, but do I understand the steps in the logic and the principles of how I reached my conclusion? And so it was going slowly through those problems after that to really help solidify the answers. And it worked for me.
Yeah, and then eventually you started to see things clicking in your head and starting to
Mhm,
make more sense the more you dived into the harder subjects, because now you build that foundation. When you got
mhm,
into the afternoon, did it get easier? Did you find it getting easier with like having
mhm.
that foundation from the morning and the YouTube videos that you mentioned?
Yeah, so I forget the exact amount of videos that are in the morning section versus the afternoon section. I think the afternoon section is a little bit more, but it took me about maybe a third of the time to get through the afternoon section that it did for me to get through the morning section.
Mm.
And part of that is because since I don't have any engineering background or experience at all, since the morning section sets so much foundation for the afternoon, that really took me a lot longer to work through. But I found that when I had really solid understanding of my morning section, when I rolled into the afternoon, it was so much fun because the
Mm.
afternoon section is so much more real in terms of what you're doing. You're designing beams, you're looking at structural analysis, you're talking about buildings. I'm seeing questions on roadway design and signs and paint and traffic patterns and things that are real world applicable, as opposed to just these kind of funny looking shapes that I have to find the moment of inertia on. And so getting into the afternoon session was really fun because I got to see kind of the fruits of my labor in how it's going to apply in the real world. And I found that one a lot more enjoyable. So I was able to just kind of fly through that one a little bit quicker because I just was having fun doing it.
Yeah, the afternoon session definitely more practical and to the real world of engineering.
Hmm.
Um, one thing that I would love to do, if you don't mind, is if you can
Hmm.
share with me those YouTube channels that you found really helpful, and then I can link them in the description below for the students to check out. If we can do that, maybe
Yeah,
after the call, you
sure.
can share them with me. I would appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, I'd
People.
be happy to.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. And then for dynamics, I just want to let you know that a lot of civil engineers hate dynamics, so you're not alone. It's a subject that a lot of us struggle with because, I mean, civil engineering, a lot of times we are designing for things that are statics, they're not moving. And then you go to
Yeah.
dynamics and things are moving. Sometimes you might have to deal with moving loads, as you probably encountered in
Hmm.
structural analysis section,
Yeah.
and influence lines and stuff, but
Yep.
it's not heavy as dynamics. It's more like understandable than, yeah. So you're not alone. A lot of people struggle with that subject. So
Yeah, I will say when I got to influence lines on the structure on a structural analysis, that is the one topic that probably took me the longest out of everything in the afternoon
oh,
section. I probably spent maybe maybe 8 hours on a Saturday, just looking at influence lines and going through them over and over because it was so confusing for me at first. But then, like you said, everything clicked. And I
Yeah.
remember sitting here at my desk looking at my computer, and my wife was in the living room, and all of a sudden she just heard me go, "Oh," and like that light bulb above my head went off, and then it just made sense and it flew. But it took me 8 hours of just looking at it, going slowly through it, asking myself, do I understand this? Do I get why I'm doing this? And then it, like, from there, and then I didn't get a single question on influence lines on the FE,
Oh, no.
but I was ready for it if it came. I was ready for it.
Yeah, yeah, maybe the PE. You
Yeah.
know something though, when I was preparing the afternoon course, the influence line is the subject that took me the most time. I think I spent about a week and a half on it. First trying to understand it, and then second, how can
Yeah.
I explain it in a way so that students can
Yeah.
easily understand it? So there's that's
Yeah.
as well. And I tried to look up videos online. It was hard to find anything online on that
Yeah.
subject, so I
Mhm.
had so many like books of engineering. Like for a week and a half I would wake up, influence line, go to bed, and then just repeat. And then eventually, like, I got that light bulb, and then
Yeah.
like, this is actually fun, I love this now. And so
Yeah.
I was able, yeah, but yeah, it is a tricky
Mhm.
topic for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. um all right. My next question. Did you have any moments of doubt or overwhelm? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a big, daunting, huge tidal wave of information, and it's so broad with the FE. There's so many subjects that are covered. I definitely had moments of stress, of doubt, and of uncertainty. Um, the biggest thing for me was having a good support people and good system and a healthy schedule. Um, I'm very blessed. I have some really great friends that I see with relative frequency throughout the week, and so being able to go and hang out with them and decompress with them and have fun and laugh and play games really helps to kind of take the stress off of things. That's one big one. The biggest one would be my wife. Uh, she's just been so supportive and encouraging and loving and gracious to me through the whole process, being okay with losing a lot of time with me to let me go and study for this exam, because she knows that I'm working hard not to chase money just because I want to have a big pile of cash and drive a Ferrari, but because I want to be able to provide for for our family. So having her support and encouragement and love was the biggest thing. Um, and then being able to and being able to decompress and find time to be peaceful and to rest, having a good sleep schedule um, was really important too. Um, and then my faith really helped me too. Really being deep in prayer, being really reliant on knowing that God has a higher purpose for me than just to worry about a job. When I would worry about money or I'd worry about getting a job, I'd be like, no, there's like I have peace knowing that God is going to provide for my family, and I'm working to glorify Him above all else. And that helped bring me a lot of peace too, and confidence in knowing that I'm doing my job, and that's all I can do. And having trust that there's something bigger going on is really brought me a lot of peace.
That's really awesome. Yeah, to believe in like everything at the end will work itself, and that you, God or the universe or whatever you believe in, got you back. I think that helps a lot during those moments when people are having doubts or feeling overwhelmed. Definitely does help. Um, I wonder also if the fact that your wife went through the same journey and the fact that she did it gave you that kind of like motivation. Well, if she did it, I can do it as well. I wonder
Mhm.
if that helped you as well to like keep going.
It
Then,
it did. It
yeah.
did. So when my wife started her journey on this path, that was back in 2019, 2020. So I remember when COVID hit, and we were sitting in our apartment, and she would study in the morning, she would work, and then she would study again, getting ready for her FE exam. So seeing that, it kind of brought back, when I was sitting down to do it, it kind of brought back memories of that. But she got inspired to do it because her stepdad is a civil engineer also. And at one point, they were in the office together, just talking, because he also works for the Department of Transportation. And they were in the office together, and they had a conversation with a couple of other engineers. And then they walked away from them. And my wife looked at her stepdad and goes, "Those guys are engineers? Like, I can do what they do." And so that kind of helped click for her. Like, like when you say, "Oh, you're an engineer," to someone who's not an engineer, that's just like, "Oh, you are like super smart. You know every single thing about how everything works." But then talking with some of these engineers and seeing the work they do, you're like, "Oh, like it's just a lot more realistic about the kind of work they're doing, the level of work and what's expected." And so that kind of helped give her the jump start into thinking that she could do this too. And my wife is very, very smart, much smarter than I am. So she went through and did it and absolutely crushed it and kicked its butt. And so then me looking in, I'm like, hey, like I know that I can do this. I know that if God has this for me, that this is going to work out. And I'm trusting that. And so I felt like this was the right path. And so having her support and her encouragement, her telling me, "You can do this too, Harrison." Like just because I didn't pass the first try doesn't mean you need to pass the first try either. You just need to know that this is going to set us up the best way. And I agreed with that. So going in, knowing that anything, whatever happens, I'm getting closer to my goal, whether I pass or fail my first time. That helped bring me a lot of peace and a lot less stress. Because if I went in going like, I need to pass the first try, otherwise we're going to lose our house and all these other horrible things, that would bring a lot of stress. But I went in going, hey, if I pass the first try, awesome. If I don't pass the first try, that's okay. I can literally just sit down and take the darn thing again in a little bit. And I know that I'm going to pass this at some point. And I know I'm going to set us up to be good. These are all good things. There's no bad things here. Nothing bad is going to happen if I don't pass first try. So that took a lot of the stress off of the first attempt, which helped me want to study more because I just felt freer to be able to go into it and really put my mind to it and not worry about like the consequences of failing.
Yeah, I think you were more learning than studying. And I think there is definitely a difference between studying and learning. And I think a lot of times, I don't think saying studying is a good thing necessarily for us, but it's just whatever, it's what we use and a lot of people use. But I think if we switch that to like, I'm learning, your whole mindset shifts and changes. So like, I'm learning this for me versus I'm studying for this exam. Big difference, right? Where you were talking about when you were learning all those subjects, you were trying to make sure that you understood what you were doing and you understood the steps and not just getting the right answer. And when you took this exam, you were like, I'm just going to learn as much as I can, go take it and see what happens. You were not so much focused on the result or what happens if you fail. You weren't nervous about failing either. You were okay. You went in with being okay. If I fail, I'm okay with it. And I think that's a really big one because I have a couple students who are ready to take their FE exam. I can see they're ready. They're taking practice exam. They've been studying. They're doing awesome. And they're so afraid of scheduling the exam because they're so scared of failing it. And I always say, like, do not go into the exam being afraid of failing this exam. You have to go in and accept the fact that there is a chance that you might actually fail because you have no idea what type of questions you might get. Your brain could just freeze, your computer could shut down and they don't give you extra minutes. And then now you're running out of time and now you're stressed. So many things could happen and you gotta like expect that. You gotta like be ready for that, right? Yeah. And I think that's really important. Like you said, you said earlier, it takes off so much pressure. And now you could actually just be like, okay, I'm just going to learn this for me.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference between.
Yeah. Something else that really brought me peace too was how the test is graded. Since it's not like I just need to hit like a 75% and then I pass. since it's kind of on that weird sliding scale where they don't really tell you what's a pass or a fail.
Yeah.
I think to some people that could really stress them out if they really like to have a lot of control.
Mm.
That's the kind of person my wife is. So she studied really, really hardly because she was like, I'm not gonna let that impact me. I'm gonna be on the higher end. And so that really helped drive her, which is great. That worked for some people. For me, that brings me a lot more stress.
Mm.
So I went into going, hey, I know I'm putting my best foot forward with this, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna sit for it. And if I pass, then that's awesome. And if I don't pass, then I'm going to at least get a diagnostic report and see where my weak points are. I already knew where some of my weaker subjects were to begin with because I took the practice exam on Genie Prep. I took like the Lindbergh practice exam, and I took I think one other. I don't remember the name of it. It was a mechanical one, so I only took like the first half of it. But so with that, that brought me a lot of confidence because if I would take like a diagnostic test, for example, and I got like a 65, let's say, that that definitely needs to improve, but that also doesn't necessarily immediately mean, oh, I would have failed, because we have no idea where this stuff lands to begin with. And so I was like, I know I'm going to study my butt off up to the test date, and I'm going to go and I'm going to sit, and I know I'm going to do better than a 65 because that's what I did 3 weeks ago, and I'm better now. And it's going to land where it's going to land. And, so that took a lot of pressure off of me to try and hit a specific number. But that also is what worked for me and for my personality. I can see how that wouldn't work for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. That makes total sense. Not knowing, or it's also based on the curve, right? So which means it's based on what everybody did that week in the whole
Yeah.
United States, right?
Yeah.
And like, well, maybe somebody didn't study and just showed up and then dropped the curve, and then that could help me,
Yeah.
with my grade.
We should all be buying them dinner and saying thank you for failing, so we all pass.
Right. So there's that as well. But yeah, that's a really good point. So so if you think about all the subjects that you had to learn to pass the FE exam, besides dynamics, was there any other subject that you found really difficult, and how did you tackle it?
Let me pull up
You
my.
forgot already the subjects.
Yeah, I've got all of my subjects here in my OneNote.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the ones that I highlighted that were difficult. Dynamics, I will say I highlighted in 3 colors. Like my greens are like my good ones. My yellows are my like, oh, like I'm okay. I could definitely do a little better. And then my red ones, which is just like, these are bad. These are really
Okay.
bad. And so that's what I did to help with my review. Like once I learned everything and I went back to review, like that kind of helped guide me. I will say dynamics is my only red one, where I
Wow.
basically just kind of tossed it aside. I was like, this one is really big. There's so many questions, there's so many concepts, and it's so few questions. I was okay with kind of putting it to the side and be like, if I get like maybe a question on like acceleration, I can do that. I can figure that out. But if there's anything that gets into a little bit more complex stuff, I know I'm just gonna flag it and move on and not waste my time with it. So dynamics was my only red one.
Okay.
Let's see. I would say my next hardest one would be fluid mechanics. Fluid
Okay.
mechanics was difficult for me at first. I'm doing like you have Darcy, you have Hayes and Williams, you have all sorts of stuff. You have your continuity equations, and so that was really difficult for me at first. And I remember having a lot of conversations with my wife and my father-in-law about fluids. But what helped me was going through, and what actually really helped me with fluid is getting a decent knowledge of it, understanding. And then when I got into water resources, that helped piece things together a lot more for me, actually.
Okay.
It help things click a little bit better. But with fluid getting into it originally, and it was difficult and stuff. I remember watching a couple of just other YouTube videos on it, going through some of the problems step by step, and really just doing problems over and over. I think a lot of people, when they talk about this kind of stuff, they want to like, oh, what's the quick acronym that helped everything click for you? what's the 3 steps you memorized that made everything just fly? And it's really just, I sat down and I did a lot of practice problems. I did a lot of practice problems. But no, that's not true. With one thing with fluid was looking at the Bernoulli equation and understanding the different parts of it and how they all work, not as just one giant equation that I plug in, and recognizing that pressure head on both sides. If I cancel all of them out and I put the pressure heads together, I'm going to be able to solve for some kind of variable. That was not something that, for me, I'd ever seen before in any kind of math or any kind of formulas. So when that made sense, it helped me get through a lot of those problems that where I was going to be needing to use Bernoulli in some way, shape, or form. So, and since Bernoulli kind of sets a really strong base for a lot of what you're doing in fluids, it's so heavily tested. I think I got like 3 or 4 problems that were just straight Bernoulli equations. And like canceling out some of the pressure stuff if it was open to the atmosphere and things like that. So like small tweaks and stuff, but having a good understanding of just the Bernoulli equation really helped me a lot and helped set a framework for a lot of the other water stuff I did.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when I was going to college and learning, engineering and stuff, one way that really helped me understand the subjects and do well in my classes was really just doing so many practice problems. So I would take the engineering books, go to the library and do almost every single example, every single problem at the end of the chapter, go to office hours, ask the professors. I used to always be in office hours. I used to always bother my professors, but that's how I was able to understand a lot of the engineering concepts. Because like when you represent theories and concepts, you look at it and you're like, okay, well, this makes sense. But then when I'm solving problems, how would I apply this? And that's really the tricky part. It's like, how do you take those concepts and you apply them? And also every problem you approach it differently, right? Depends on the problem and stuff. Like you said with the Bernoulli equation, that equation could change depending if it's open to the atmosphere or if not, or if you have open surface and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So, and so you have to understand all those exceptions and to understand those, sometimes doing different type of problems can help you actually process those concepts and see how they're being applied. So now I think now I kind of see how you were able to pass your FE exam, because when I first got your email, or Pranita, when she told me that you passed your FE exam, we did like a major in accounting. It's like, I'm like, I want to understand more. How did he do it? Like, I got so like interested because it's pretty impressive what you have done. As I told you as well before we started this interview. And so, but now I think I see a little bit what you did there. Your strategy was just like learn the concepts and just apply into so many different problems and see how they're being used, and that helped you kind of process a lot of it.
Yeah.
That pretty much summarizes it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. And I think if someone is getting like their engineering degree, definitely taking advantage of those office hours and talking with their engineering professors. Like that was the biggest thing for me that I wish I had more of, was having like really easy access to a master in these topics to be able to talk through questions and stuff. Because like I would be able to discuss things with my wife, but she's got her E.I.T certificate and she also has a full-time job like I do. So I'm not able to always have these deep conversations with her about it, and she might not know the answers. And like same with my father-in-law, like he's a PE, and he's got a full-time job. I don't have easy access to him every time of the day. I could shoot him a text, but he's busy. He's a busy guy, and so not being able to have those conversations about some of those harder topics was definitely something that maybe I wish I had more of. And that if you have office hours, if you're an engineering student, you have access to someone who is able to answer those questions, take advantage of that, because that is a huge help, and I think would have benefited me even more if I had the access to that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, all right. Okay, let's dive in now into resources. So besides our accelerator course, so you took morning, afternoon, statics, you took the whole bundle, the 2 practice exams, one the conceptual, the practical.
Mhm.
Besides that, you also watch couple YouTube videos, couple channels that you will
Mhm.
share with me after the call, and I can link that in the description below for the students in case they want to check it out. And then couple practice exams as well. Was there anything else that you used that helped you with your studies?
So let me just run it through. Yeah, I used the Genie Prep. I used those YouTube channels. Um, I used the resources I just had around me with people that I knew who were educated in the topics. Um, I used the practice stuff. I used the Lindbergh practice. Um, I used one other practice. I can tell you, look it up after this. I can give you the full list of what I use. It's escaping me at the moment. I used the NCES practice exam for civil. I also was able to get my hands on an NCES mechanical practice exam, which has very similar problems for their morning portions. So
Mm.
I was able to go through and do that and help solidify the morning stuff. For me, that was really helpful. Is there anything else I used? I don't think so. I think that was all I used. And if there's other resources out there, I wish I'd gotten my hands on them. But that's what I had available to me, and that's what ended up working out.
Okay. And then what were some of the things that you really liked about our courses that you felt like it helped you pass your FE exam?
I really enjoyed how this one's a small thing, but it really made a big difference for me, which was that the problems were broken up as a presentation of the problem in the intro, and then the solution in a different video,
Mm.
because it helped me separate getting exposed to the problem and trying to work through it and then seeing how is the solution, as opposed to just here's the problem, we're going to run through it right now and get into it. Having that broken out actually was really helpful for me because it helped me make sure that I knew what I was doing and I
Mm.
didn't just cheat and see that I how the problem solved and follow along and be like, great, I know how to solve this problem. I really like that. I really also enjoyed the amount of the problems too, because with how much with how important it is to learn how to like manage time and do a lot of problems in one day on the exam day, coupling that with the scope of all of the material and subjects and topics that are covered, I felt like there was a really good coverage of all the problems that were on Genie Prep.
Mm.
um yeah, I thought the questions were good. There was a good mix in ramp up in difficulty, starting with more simpler problems, setting a groundwork, and then getting more and more. Because I remember I would go through them and I'd be like, okay, these are cool. And then I would go to the very next problem, problem 22 or whatever. And I would look at it and be like, what is that? And but that might have been my inexperience in engineering and lack of education coming in, because it would go completely different route all of a sudden. I'd be like, I've never seen this before in my life. How is this related in any way? This looks like a completely different animal.
Mm-hmm.
And so that might have been my engineering inexperience playing in. But then I would go back to, okay, like I'm going to watch this. I'm going to set the groundwork for it. I'll Google what this is. I'll watch another YouTube video on it. And I would run through the problems again and again. I would start to just learn how to go through the problems. Um, and I'm really surprised I haven't brought this up yet. Probably the biggest resource was my FE handbook.
Oh, yeah.
That the resource guide that they give you. I had that up every single time I was studying, whether no matter the subject, no matter whether it was ethics or not. I always had that open. I was always going back and referencing that because I knew that the majority of the answers to my questions were in that book, and I just needed to learn how to use it. And so by the end of my studying, I knew page numbers, I knew everything. I knew page number and then like where in the page to exactly look. I knew where to go for my different loads, my displacements, all sorts of stuff. That was getting that memorized was probably the biggest help actually for the entire exam, was really having a good working knowledge of how does my reference handbook work, where are things located, and how to navigate it.
Yeah, the reference handbook is very important to
Mhm.
I will always tell you guys, make sure that you guys use it. because it helps you to know where the equations are and all that. Okay, awesome. Let's talk about your schedule. So how many months did you study?
So I studied for about 8, 9 months. And
Okay.
so that's pretty long. And that's probably because I don't have any engineering stuff. So I was starting literally at square one, trying to remember math I hadn't done since like my second or third year of college, which is I won't count it, but it's a long time ago. Um, so I started studying like the middle end of December of
Okay.
2022, and then sat on August 7th of 2023. So 8, 9 months around there. Um, and I would study 5, 6 days a week.
Okay.
And I would study around my job. I have a full-time job, so I would have to balance things around that. So I would wake up between 4 and 5 in the morning, and I would study for 2, 3 hours. I'd start my work. I would, on my lunch breaks, I would study. I would watch YouTube videos. I would rewatch problems on Genie Prep. I would go back to work, and I would clock out. I would kiss my wife, and I would study for another 2, 3 hours, and
Wow.
then I would have the rest of my day. And
Okay.
so that was and obviously like that fluctuates. I was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination sticking to that. We had a couple of vacations that we would go on, and I wouldn't study on those. Or like if I did, it would be very, very brief, like if I woke up early while my wife was still sleeping. But that was I would study probably anywhere between, on the low end, 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. On the high end, I would try and get maybe like 5 or 6 hours in for a day, and it would fluctuate between that just depending on how life went. But that was for about 8, 9 months.
Wow, that's intense. That's a very intense schedule. Do you work from home?
I do.
Okay.
I'm very lucky to be able to work from home, which made it a lot easier.
Yep.
It also made it harder because a lot of like my work would pop up, and I would have that at the same moment if I saw like an email come in before work hours started, and maybe I would like want to try and respond to that, but I was like, nope, I'll work when I'm paid to work, and I'm going to study when I'm off my clock, and I'm gonna really dedicate my time and be intentional and disciplined with that.
Yeah.
What was hard is really like setting that discipline, those boundaries for myself, and it really helped me grow a lot, honestly, as a person, to really have that disciplined schedule, really sit down and being intentional with it.
Yeah. We're starting to lose that a little bit. I think a lot of people struggle with that, with everything
Hmm.
that's going on and working from home and constantly connecting to our emails, our phones, social media, all of the stuff that's going on around us. It's
Hmm.
harder and harder for us to just like focus on one task at a time and be intentional with our time and be present.
Yeah.
I think if a lot of people can sit for like just an hour every day, right? Just 1 hour with no distractions, and you're just studying for your FE and you're being intentional and you are really in the flow, in the zone, you will grasp so much material versus if you're doing that 1 hour and then checking email in the meantime
Hmm.
or in between or scrolling through social media and all that. Um, so I'm really glad you were able to reach that through this
Yeah.
journey. It's
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I reached that, and then I read Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's behind you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
read that back in June. My wife and I took a trip to Texas, and I read that while we were on our vacation, and I was like, this like
Yeah.
this puts towards everything that I'm practicing already, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes total sense.
Yeah.
So awesome book,
Yeah.
fantastic. Can't recommend it enough.
Yeah.
And definitely inspired me to continue on with what I was doing and maybe make a couple of tweaks. Like when I studied, I usually had my phone face down on my desk, so I wouldn't like pop up and see things. I started putting it in the other room. I was like,
Yeah.
this is like, I'm
Exactly.
getting rid of it. Getting rid of it. It's the worst thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, but that's really it. You have to have it in a separate room than you are, because I
Hmm.
don't think you'll be able, even if it's face down and do not disturb mode, and you're not gonna see the messages, you're gonna face a
Yeah.
different problem, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to be like, I hate this. I don't want to be studying. I don't want to do this, without really, noticing the phone is already in your hand. And so it's really better to just have it on the other side of the room. And then also as well, while you're studying, you might want to get up, go stretch, during your breaks, versus just being on your phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just walking a little bit between your studies when you get tired and stuff. That's better than being on your phone and just being on social media. So yeah, love his book, love his other books as well. He has one, I think, on email. I forgot the title. He just, I think, launched it last year. Great book. And then the other one that I really loved was Digital Minimalist. So he talks about how to be intentional about social media. So yeah, I'm not, he's not saying like don't use social media, but how can you use it as like getting the information that you need and being intentional and getting out, right? Not being like a consumer, like a consumer. So it's a really great book. So I would also recommend that one as well.
Totally. I took the social media plunge about 3 years ago and got rid of all of it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Oh, my wife and I watched The Social Dilemma, the documentary about social media. And I saw it and I was like, I'm getting rid of all of my social media. I'm done. And so I cut all of it, and I actually didn't expect myself to stick with it completely.
Wow.
But now I'm 3 years later and I haven't been on Facebook or Instagram or any of that since then. And I'm like, it was the best thing for me. I love it. I'm so glad I got off.
Yeah.
But like some people, like they use it for business. I understand that there are some aspects of it that are beneficial. But it is finding that balance, and I think it can also be just so destructive for your mindset, for your self-worth. So I don't know. For me, I'm a big proponent of cutting social media. That's what I advocate, but just to each their own.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. I did not know that. I was never into social media. I do have social media for work mostly. I don't really handle it anymore. So, but I do want to ask, how did you find us if you're not really into, social media and all that? YouTube?
So I found you guys because of like everything comes back to my wife. When she was studying for her FE, she used a different prep course, but then eventually during her preparations and she was watching YouTube videos on her own, she found your YouTube channel, and so she recommended you to me, and she was like, "Hey, check Kenza out. She's really, really good. I really like how she explains stuff. She might be a good option for you." And so I was looking at your course and I was like, oh, this could be pretty good. I was looking at a couple others trying to decide like, okay, which is the best route for me? How do I want to do this? And then your Black Friday sale went up. And so I was like, that is going to be what I'm going to do, because I'm going to save a bunch of money, and it's not like a cutoff on a certain time, or I'm not paying by the month. I just pay it, I get it, and I'm done. And that takes a lot of pressure off of me, because I'm like, if I don't pass my first time, for example, I know I'm not losing like hundreds of dollars more a month to get my review material to make up for it. I know I've got it and I'm good. And however long it takes for me to get it, I'll be okay. So it was my wife's recommendation, her referral, and it was definitely the best for me. I looked at a couple others, and I still, even if the sale wasn't there, I think I still would have gone with Genie Prep, because it was the best setup for me.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. And then, you do have the course lifetime access. I mean, you took about 9 months to study for it. A lot of courses offer 3-6 months, so there's that as well. You lose access to all the course material. And then when you're planning for your PE, you can always use the afternoon course for the PE breath. So there's also that as well. So a lot of benefits. Okay. All right. Let's see. So the exam day, you went into your exam. How were you feeling? Walk us through that a little bit.
So I mentioned before, one of the biggest things leading up to the exam and during my study was having really good friends and a really good support group. I had asked my wife to write me like a supportive letter to read before I go in. I thought that would be really kind. So I had asked her to do it, and she was like, "Of course." And so she wrote me a little letter. But what I didn't know is she went and talked to three of my best friends at church. And on I took a test on a Monday. And so on that Sunday, the three of them went up to her and gave her letters that all three of them had wrote me also.
Oh.
And so I woke up on Monday morning, um, feeling actually pretty good. I'd gotten a good amount of sleep, as much as I could have for the day before a test, so I was still nervous.
Yeah.
But I'd gotten a good amount of sleep, and I woke up at like 5 because I was like, I'm not getting to my test center late. I know my test exam is at 8. I want to be there at like 7 or 7:15 because I don't want to miss it. And so when I woke up, I went and I saw all the letters sitting on my island in the morning, and that made me feel so loved and happy, to feel the support of my friends, and that helped to really release a lot of the stress and tension that I think I would have felt.
Oh, wow.
So I got those letters, hopped in the car, drove over to the exam center. I was listening to music that really just filled my spirit. Um, I honestly, like, I'll say it, like when I was driving over and I was singing, I was crying because I felt so loved and so supported by my support group. And I just felt so grateful for the people that I had. So that really took a lot of the stress off. And so then when I parked, read my letters, cried a little bit more, but not crying out of stress or anxiety or panic, but just out of just gratitude for the friends that God's given me, and the people that are in my life. And I was really happy. And so I went in and I was smiling. I was standing outside of the test center before, and there was a couple other people who were there lined up to take the same exams as I was. There was like maybe like 10 people there that were all there to take the FE Civil, and I was kind of like sizing them up, and I was like, okay, who's going to drop the curve for me? Who's going to raise it? Um, and I was looking at them, and all of them were like just standing like this with like their legs tapping, looking super nervous and super really tight. I could like feel the tension. And I was just kind of sitting there. I was like standing. I was a little loose. I felt good, because a lot of the stress and anxiety of a big scary test had been taken away from me. And so I honestly felt a lot of peace, and I felt peace and love knowing that my friends and my family love me, whether I pass or fail this test. That felt great, and really believing that, and having confidence in myself, knowing I've worked really hard. I had a good knowledge of the materials, and I was really going to give this a really good shot. And and being okay with knowing that if I walk in and get punched in the mouth and fail, that I can stand back up and take another swing, and I can keep swinging as long as I need to, and eventually I'm going to pass this test. And knowing that it was a matter of when, not if,
Mm.
brought a lot of peace. And I had my cheat sheet with me, just a couple pieces of like folded paper that I was like I was reading at like right up until the point I walked into the room. I was reading and going over it, to make sure I had stuff locked in my brain, and then I would look at it also during my 25-minute break, just to make sure things were fresh and good in my mind. Um, but yeah, that helped me a lot. Having good friends, good support, having those letters was really sweet. It was one of the highlights of my life, seeing like my friends come around me and lift me up in a really difficult time. Felt really blessed.
Wow, that was really beautiful, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
And I think you're giving people a lot of ideas. Hopefully, somebody can take this idea and share it with his wife or
Yeah.
husband, and they can write a letter and then help them with that anxiety. Like you said, it's true. The day of the exam, just those couple hours before, when you wake up, you have this knot in your stomach and you're just like anxious, sweaty palms, and your heart is racing. Been through that. um
Hmm.
can't eat breakfast. Like, I remember I couldn't even eat breakfast, but my husband did force me to have at least
Good.
something.
Good.
Yeah, but like you
Good.
said,
Good
it's
guy.
really Yeah, it really does help when you have that support system, and when you know that even if you don't succeed, nothing's gonna change. People still gonna be there for you, still gonna support you, still love you, and just have knowing that and having that helps a lot mentally, and then takes off a lot of the pressure as well. The pressure of having to, "Oof, I have to pass this, or else it's gonna be embarrassing, or I have to tell my family that I failed, and I don't know how they're gonna react to it," and it just adds so much more layers and pressure, and something that you don't need during that time. The exam itself is already stressful, so I think that's going to help a lot of people. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
awesome. Okay, so you went into the exam. How was your exam? What was it like?
Um, One thing I wish I had done is rewatch the video of what exactly the screen looks like
Mm,
um, for the exam, because I'd watched it before, but I'd kind of forgotten it. And so going and seeing it, it took me a couple of moments to kind of recalibrate my brain as to what I was looking at and how I was going to be navigating all of my materials. Um, but the exam questions themselves were pretty similar, I found, to the Genie Prep questions and to the questions on the NCES exam, the
mm,
practice exam. I had gone in with the intention of making sure I operated under a good time split. I wanted to give myself 3 hours for the afternoon portion, because even though I was more confident in the afternoon portion sections, I felt like those questions took me longer to solve because of there's a lot of moving parts, especially with a lot of the stuff in the structural analysis and structural design. So I wanted I think I wanted 2 hours, 25 minutes for my front end, and then my 3 hours for my back end. So that's what I was trying to operate under. And I also went in with the game plan of, if I see a problem, if I don't know where to go in my handbook and know at least where to go to find this stuff to solve it in 3 seconds, I flag it and I move on. I'm not wasting time. Because going through my practice exams leading up to the exam, that was a problem for me, was my time management.
mm,
And so setting those rules up for me, knowing how much time I wanted for the afternoon, and also what my rules were per question. If I don't know 3 seconds, flag and go. That really helped keep me on a good pace. And so I went through my whole front end questions, and I flagged maybe like 50% of them, because it didn't register right away. So I wanted to make sure I just went through and moved on. I flagged maybe 50% of my starting questions of the morning portion. And I think my split was 54 for the morning and 56 for the after,
okay.
because it is
Yep.
kind of adjusts like that. And so I got through my 54 in about 45 minutes. Was
Ooh,
were the ones that I knew,
okay.
um, because they were ones where I either knew immediately where they were in the handbook, or I just had it memorized and I didn't even need to go in my handbook. So I got through my first half of the morning questions in about 45 minutes. So I looked at the time, I was like, okay, I've got an hour, 15 minutes to do another 20, like it was what, like 27 problems. So I
Mhm.
went back to the front and worked through those flagged questions, taking a little bit more time. Um, and if there were ones where I was like, I have no idea, I would on my paper that they gave me, the with my Sharpie and the laminated paper, I wrote those ones down, specifically the ones that I was like, I have no clue what I'm looking at.
Mm,
Worked through, and I ended up going through all of my morning problems, and I think I straight guessed, like I had no idea. I straight guessed on 2 problems, and then the rest of them I either figured out or had pretty educated guesses on what the solutions were. Um, and at the end of the day, I was like, if I have a pretty good guess or know them for sure on 52 out of 54 of the problems, I was like, I'm okay with that. I'm gonna take that as a win, especially since they throw in 10 problems that are gonna be like kind of like metric questions that don't actually count towards your score.
yeah.
There was one problem I remember that asked for, and it was the 4 answers that they gave were numerical. It was like a 4, 10, 16, and 20. But the picture I looked at had no numbers on it. So I was like, how the heck do I figure this out? I have no idea what I'm looking at.
Mm,
And so I just was like, I'm not worrying about it. Like, And I think if I didn't have a good head on my shoulders of knowing that and knowing how the exam worked going into it, I think I could have seen that and gotten in my head and started to panic
Yeah.
and been like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know how to solve the problems. This is going to go horrible. What if all the rest of the problems are like this? And I would have just snowballed down. But I was okay with going, whatever. There's 109 other questions. Why am I going to panic about this one? And being okay with being like, I don't know that one, and worrying about it isn't going to help me now, sitting in the exam room. So moving on from that. And so I had I think a decent game plan with a couple of guidelines for myself to keep me on the straight and narrow on my test and keep me good. And I think at the end of it, it took me 2 hours and 27 minutes to go through my morning portion. So I was pretty close to what I wanted, which I was happy about.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's better than what I did. I think I spent 2 hours and 40 minutes on the morning session. I wanted to finish at 2:30,
Yeah.
but I went a little bit over. But you had a really good exam strategy. And I think it's really important to have that because, like you said, you can easily spiral. You can see a question and be like, oh my God, how come I don't know this question? And then start spiraling from there, which is not going to help you in any way. It's just going to make things worse. And you're not going to be able to focus on the rest of the problems. The other thing too that I always try to tell you guys is that every question is counted as 1 point, right? So, if you just, if you get a question that you're not sure about, just like, and you have no idea how to solve it, just put a letter and move on. Go focus on the ones that you actually know. It's going to be worth 1 point either way, right? So it's not worth spending that much time on those problems, and you're not there to get a perfect score. You're not there to solve every single problem, and you have to go in with that in mind when you go into the exam. That's another thing I think a lot of people struggle with. So when they get a problem, they can't solve it. They stay stuck in that problem. They're losing time. They're not able to solve other problems that they can actually solve. And then you add this spiraling, right? Oh my God, I can't solve it. It's taking me too long. And so it just really adds up. You had a really good strategy. And I think that's really important to have before going into the exam.
Yeah, it definitely helped. My wife helped me really establish a good strategy and then stick to it with my practice exams. With my practice exams, I wanted to really mimic the exam environment as much as I could. And so I would only use, my desk setup, I have 2 monitors that I work on and do my studying on. And so I turned off one of them and only used 1 monitor because that's how the exam is set up. You only have 1 computer monitor. And it was really, during my studies, my learning, during my learning, I went in and I would use 2 screens because I would take notes on one, I would watch videos on the other, and it was just much easier. But for the mimicking of the exam environment, I would turn one off and only use the other one. And I would kind of snap my screens to the corners to mimic what the look was for the actual exam. So and then doing that, and then also doing all of having like a big stack of binder paper that I would write on to doing my my calculations to mimic what it would look like in the exam. Also, was what really helped me be comfortable with what the setup was going in. Just the monkey wrench that got thrown in was the slight difference in what the navigation was for the reference manual on the exam versus how maybe you open it like in Adobe.
Yeah. So that's a really good point you brought up. The same thing happened to me when I went to the exam. I was, oh no, the search bar looks different, and took me a
Yeah.
minute to get used to it. I actually do have a YouTube video where I talk about this. Maybe you missed it. We have a lot of videos. You could have easily missed it, but usually the search key that's similar to the FE, it's Control Shift F. So if you do that in your PDF, it will give you that same search bar you have at the NCS exam, which is different than just the search, which I prefer that search found versus the whole bar, but that's how they
Definitely.
have it. Yeah.
One thing that kind of tripped me up was I couldn't search by page number on the exam.
Oh
I could
no.
only search by bookmarks.
Okay.
So I would have to either do my the Control Shift N type search box
Right.
or click on the bookmarks and scroll through the pages. And I had page numbers memorized for very specific things. And so that it didn't confuse me. It just made it take a little bit of extra time to navigate to them. Um, but it wasn't a big deal, but it didn't get in the way, it just irritated me.
Yeah, yeah. Especially also because their computers are slow, and so when
Yeah.
you search, you're like, come on, like I'm on
Oh,
a timer here,
yeah.
and then knowing the page number would have totally just like helped to go a little bit
Yeah.
faster. But yeah, that's a
And
good.
I had one guy sitting next to me who I don't know what exam he was taking, but his leg was bouncing the entire exam. And
Oh,
since we were on the second floor of the test building, my monitor was shaking for a lot of the exam. And to a couple points where I had to like reach over and like grab my computer screen to keep it from shaking because it was shaking from this guy, the legs bouncing so much.
wow.
So I was going between annoyance with him and feeling bad for him because I was like, this guy is stressed out. I felt bad.
Wow, see, you have no idea what could happen during your
Yeah,
exam. Like you just had the
no,
shaky, slow monitor right there. Who
a
would have known?
million things.
You would have had no idea you were gonna have that.
No,
But
no idea.
I think the fact that you went in like so relaxed, and I think those letters really helped you as well to get
Yeah,
into really good mindset.
definitely.
I think those things really helped you to like stay calm and just, and even with all of that, you were still able to enjoy the exam, I hope, and enjoy
Yeah,
just solving engineering problems and being like,
yeah,
oh my God, I can actually solve this. And it's just like
yeah,
you, you know, like having moments like that. It's pretty awesome.
yeah. It was great. I remember for the start of my afternoon portion, um, maybe 2 days before my exam date, I had reviewed some chemistry conversions. So converting things using the different like molecular weights
Hmm.
from the reference handbook. And I hadn't touched that in a long time. Um, and I haven't taken any chemistry classes since high school. And so I remember reviewing that and I was like, okay, cool. Like if I remember this, great. Like probably not gonna be on the exam. My very first problem was a chemistry conversion. Um, and I looked at it and I just did like a fist pump in the air because I was like, oh my gosh, I just reviewed this and I totally know how to do this problem. And I know I'm going to get it right. And that felt so good. And that set a really good tone for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm such with that question. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So right, so you started with the afternoon with environmental engineering then. That was your first subject.
Yeah. My first one that hit was environmental. And it was environmental for like two problems. And then it jumped over to surveying and then back to environmental.
Mm,
It was
okay.
interesting. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know how they do that. I don't know how they shuffle questions in and out, but yeah, it started with that chemistry question, then it went over to surveying, and then back to environmental and hydrology,
It was
and then
that
it followed a pretty similar pattern.
okay? Okay, that's what I was gonna ask because usually they have it per topic, right? They start with math and
Yeah.
then uh ethics, engineering, economics, whatever the topic after specification.
Ethics. Yeah.
Yeah, and they go in that order. But when I was taking my exam, I do remember, I don't remember which subjects exactly where, like I had a problem in a section, and then I had an
Mhm.
afternoon problem, and then back to the morning, and then
Yeah.
that threw me off a little bit,
Yeah.
because I wasn't expecting that. But
Hmm.
it's really good to share these things. This is why I love to do these interviews so that people have a little
Hmm.
bit know what to expect during their exam. It just really helps a lot, and knowing
Yeah.
that anything could really happen,
Hmm.
right? And just being ready for that. But yeah, because like when you told me you had environmental, I'm like, well, you got 54 questions. You would have still had a little bit more surveying questions going into the afternoon. So I was a little surprised that, but you got environmental back to surveying and then environmental again, which is
Yeah.
interesting. So yeah,
Yeah.
things
I
happen.
know,
Yeah,
but I was ready and it was okay.
yeah,
Didn't panic or freak out.
exactly. Yeah,
It was really nice that the test followed a basic structure all the way through, though, in terms of what
yeah,
questions it. And it felt really nice when I was like, okay, I know I'm done with math.
right,
I see ethics questions. I'm done with math.
right.
Thank you, God. Oh, it
Yeah,
feels really good when you get through those when you get through those harder sections. You know,
yeah.
like you're done with them, and they're not going to pop up like 80 questions later.
Right, that's true. And just knowing that, like, okay, I'm in static section, brain starts using
Mhm.
equations from statics, right?
Yeah,
It's like your brain goes like, okay, we're gonna go to statics equations,
yeah,
and versus just like being everywhere, which is the case
totally.
for the PE. So that's interesting. So the PE, they changed the format, and now it's like you get questions from everywhere, and it's not per subject. It's they combine even breadth with depth. So, but that's
Mhm.
for another video. Um, all right. Okay. So you 7 days later, you found out
Mhm.
you passed your FE exam. How did you feel? Did you expect it? Like after the exam, were you like, okay, I got this. I think I passed. I think I did well. Or were you like, I have no idea. What was it like?
I felt like I had no idea.
Okay.
Um, 'Cause some people exit and they're like super confident and they're like, I know I passed. I don't know how people do that.
Yeah.
That's a level of self-confidence that I admire. Um, my wife was the extreme opposite. She came out and was just like certain she had failed.
Wow.
And so for me, I landed in the middle. I came out being like, I feel like I did pretty good, but that's also concerning that I feel like I did pretty good because I feel like if I'm like, oh, I feel like I did really good, then I'm gonna fail because clearly I didn't understand something and I was so ignorant of the topics that it just went over my head completely. Um, so I came out really unsure. I was like, I think I did okay, but I don't know if it was good enough to pass.
Mm. Yeah.
And so what helped kind of boost my confidence a little bit in those waiting days was I got a couple of questions on the exam that I just did not know the answer to that were conceptual questions. So one of them, like for example, was I had to drag and drop the names of different retaining walls to match the picture of the walls, and they were names of retaining walls that either I didn't remember or had just never seen before. And so I remember looking at it for like 3 seconds, even like, I don't know this, I'm gonna have to guess and use my best judgment. And so I guessed on them, remembered it, and just like moved on. And so when I got home, I Googled these different retaining walls and I saw it and I was like, I got this right. I guessed on these 5 retaining walls and I got them right.
Wow.
So that made me feel good. And then another one was asking another conceptual question I guessed on was like what is a piezometer? And so I was looking at, I was like, I do not remember this at all. And so in the reference handbook that you had, I not Googled, I searched piezometer, and there was nothing really about definition, but it was in the section that was talking about pore water pressure and measuring pressure. And so there was one question that kind of mentioned pressure, so I was like, I'm guessing that, and I'm moving on. I'm not
Mm.
going to worry about it. And then I
Yeah.
got home, Googled piezometer, read through it, and I was like, I got this right. Oh my goodness. And so seeing those and kind of double checking my answers that I remembered that I guessed on and seeing that I got those right brought me a lot of peace afterwards. And so then I actually had to wait 10 days to get my exam results
Mm.
because sat on a Monday and had to find out the following Wednesday, um, which sucked. That's like the longest amount of time you could possibly wait. If you take your test on a Monday, you're gonna have to wait the longest amount of time to get your results. Um, but that following Wednesday, I went and I checked my phone in the morning and I was like, it was like 5 a.m. and it was like NCES exam results posted. And so I went on and I knew what it would look like if I failed or if I passed. And I just saw the green. And I just remember like my eyes going super wide. And I honestly just ran. I didn't run. I kind of got up and I walked around my living room a little bit and I just like put my hands on my knees and just like was like exhaling like really deep breaths because all of this work, months of my life, all this time, all this stress, worry, perseverance, like all culminated into just seeing past in green. And it felt so good. I felt like $1,000,000. And I felt so much relief. Um, and then I got to tell my wife and she was obviously ecstatic for me too. And it just felt amazing to know that all the hard work had paid off in getting a pass result.
Yeah, for sure. So you found out at 5 a.m. Did you wake up your wife at 5 a.m.? Was she already awake?
No, 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 no. Don't do that, guys. If
I
your
want
wife's
to
asleep at
know.
5 a.m.,
I want to know when did you tell her? How did that happen?
I told her when she woke up,
Okay, okay.
which was around she starts work at 7. So I told her around like 6:45 when I saw her, because we both work from home, and
Okay.
so we're able to, like, if you're not studying for your FE exam in the morning, you're able to sleep up until a couple of minutes before you wake up, and you're still able to get to work on time. Um,
Yeah.
and so I just waited until she got up and told her. I wasn't gonna wake her up.
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's smart, but that's awesome. Congratulations. I'm really happy for you, Harrison. I have one more question for you.
Mhm.
If a student comes up to you and asks you to list 3 things that really helped you pass your FE exam, what would you say to them?
Um, Number 3 would be a good support system, good friends, good family there. Number 2 would be discipline in sticking to a study schedule, sticking to making sure that you are really understanding your topics. And then number 1 is a trust in a higher power. For me, that's God, Lord Jesus Christ. And for others, that might be something else, and that's them. But for me, having a trust in knowing that there is something bigger than you, knowing that this is just a small exam for a future in getting a career and making money, and that's great. And if you make sure you're doing it for an honorable goal. But for me, it was going forward and knowing that hard work and discipline and taking care of my family was honoring to God.
All right, that's awesome. I love that. Well, Harrison, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey with us. I am very impressed with what you have done. Very proud of you, and congratulations again on passing your FE exam, and really appreciate the time that you took to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.